Usually, when we think about the map of the world, we kind of picture a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Right, yeah, like brightly colored countries, solid black borders.
Exactly. Distinct and completely separate. And the assumption is that you can tap on one piece or, even pull it out completely, and the rest of the board just stays exactly where it is.
Which is almost never how it actually works.
No, not at all. But today, we are looking at an intelligence document that proves the world is actually, well, a single highly sensitive circulatory system. And right now, we are witnessing a massive spike in its blood pressure.
Yeah, which means a pinched nerve in, say, one far-off extremity can almost instantly trigger a massive cascading shock for the entire body.
It's all connected.
We are completely interdependent, whether we really like to acknowledge it or not.
Well, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you. We have a singular mission today. We are taking a magnifying glass to one incredibly dense piece of intelligence, which is an urgent excerpt from the U.S.-Iran tensions brief.
And it is a dense one.
It really is. Our goal here is to surgically dissect the cause and effect chain laid out in this document. We really want to figure out how a localized military action thousands of miles away ends up threatening the very foundation of the global economy.
And to do that effectively, we kind of have to filter out the noise, right? When you are dealing with intelligence updates of this magnitude, the geopolitical rhetoric can just be deafening.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single word in a brief like this is chosen for a specific reason. And understanding those reasons requires looking at the mechanics of the situation, not the emotion.
Right. And to set the baseline for you right up front, tensions in the Middle East have spiked dramatically. We are not here to take sides today.
No, not at all.
We aren't here to debate the politics or evaluate the foreign policies or endorse any specific geopolitical strategy from either nation. We are strictly here to examine the facts, the language, and the direct mechanical implications exactly as they are outlined in this intelligence brief.
We're basically mapping the anatomy of an escalation.
Precisely. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the brief identifies a very specific catalyst for this current crisis. It points directly to consecutive nights of U.S. strikes targeting facilities like Iran's Chabahar Port.
The phrasing there is critical. I mean, not just strike in a vacuum, but strikes targeting specific physical infrastructure and, doing so on consecutive nights.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how the choice of target amplifies the message. Because Chabahar Port isn't some hidden bunker in the mountains or remote radar installation.
No, it's massive.
It's a sprawling node of economic and logistical infrastructure. We are talking about deep water berths, massive gantry cranes, customs warehouses, and all those intermodal rail lines that connect the ships to the mainland.
So striking a facility like that is a massive deal on its own. But the phrase consecutive nights really jumps off the page to me. I want to bring up an analogy here.
Okay, go for it.
If someone knocks on your door once in the middle of the night, it's a warning, right? It's a shock to the system. But if they stand there knocking night after night, it's not a warning anymore. It's a rhythmic hammering. Does the fact that these strikes happen on consecutive nights fundamentally change the military reality on the ground?
Oh, it alters the entire operational landscape. A single strike can sometimes be written off in the language of geopolitics as a kinetic message. Like a one-off event.
Well, warning shot, basically.
Exactly. It allows both sides the political breathing room to potentially de-escalate the next morning. But consecutive nights represent the sustained operational tempo.
Okay.
It tells the adversary that this is not a message. This is an active campaign to degrade capabilities.
Meaning the receiving side has to operate under the assumption that there will be a night 3, a night 4, and a night 5.
Yeah, and consider what that does to an adversary's decision-making process. In military doctrine, there is this concept called the OD loop. Observe, orient, decide, act.
The OD loop.
Right. If you hit someone once, they have time to complete that loop. They can assess the damage, figure out their options, and deliberately plan a response.
Make a calculated move.
Exactly. But if you hit them on consecutive nights, you are disrupting that loop. You force them into a state of tactical urgency.
Because they can't just sit back and plan.
Right. They are no longer in a posture of absorbing a blow and deliberating for weeks. That rhythmic hammering forces an immediate reaction. It shifts the environment from a static standoff into active, sustained friction.
So if a multi-night strike forces an immediate tactical reaction, how does a Navy respond when they are, frankly, outgunned in a conventional sense because they didn't just absorb the impact, they reacted?
They absolutely reacted.
And that brings us to the next critical piece of data in the brief. Iran's IRGC Navy, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, issued a very severe warning, stating that a 0 hour is approaching specifically for American warships.
And we have to pause on that, because the phrase 0 hour carries immense psychological and tactical weight in military terminology.
It sounds like something out of a movie, but it has a real meaning.
It does. It is the exact scheduled time for the start of an operation. By using that specific term publicly, a naval force is purposely removing the ambiguity from their threats.
They aren't just saying, you'll pay for this.
Right. They aren't issuing a vague promise of future revenge. They are signaling that the clock is actively ticking down to a predefined operational plan.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because as a reader of this brief, I kind of have to push back on that. Is 0 hour just theatrical rhetoric? I mean, we know that projecting strength is a requirement in geopolitics, right? Especially for domestic audiences after taking a hit. So should we read a phrase like that as a literal physical countdown, or is it just a way to save face? And why focus specifically on American warships instead of bases or other assets?
Well, those are the exact questions intelligence analysts wrestle with every day. The focus on American warships is an attempt to establish a direct, symmetrical military target.
Like for like.
Exactly. Yeah. You struck our maritime port, so we are targeting your naval assets. It sets up a traditional force-on-force narrative. But regarding your question about whether it's theater or a literal countdown separating the two is almost impossible, and that is very much by design.
By design? Wait, how does blending theater and reality benefit them tactically?
Because the threat itself functions as a weapon. If you are an American naval commander in the region, you cannot ignore a 0 hour declaration, even if you heavily suspect it might be bluster.
You can't take the risk.
You can't. You have to assume the decision to act has already been made and the operational orders have been drafted. You have to order your ships to a higher state of readiness.
Which means what? Waking up crews, manning the radar consoles 24/7?
Yeah, keeping the engines running at a higher capacity to ensure maneuverability.
And that takes a massive toll over time.
Huge toll. Human beings cannot operate at peak adrenaline and focus indefinitely. Inducing fatigue is actually a recognized asymmetric warfare tactic.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
By setting a 0 hour threat, you force the opposing side to expend immense resources, fuel, and human endurance just maintaining a defensive posture. You are degrading their readiness without firing a single missile.
I see. So it's a psychological tool meant to induce fatigue and force the opposing side to essentially shadowbox an invisible countdown.
Exactly.
But the brief indicates the IRGC didn't just stop at threatening military vessels.
Yeah.
If you are trying to maximize leverage, eventually you stop aiming at the military and you start aiming at the money.
Right.
The operational scope of the brief expands dramatically right here.
It bleeds directly into the broader civilian infrastructure of the region.
Because the brief states that the IRGC has placed 5 major Gulf ports on a direct attack list. And to put this in perspective, I want to use a structural analogy.
Okay.
A warship is like a tank, right? It has armor, it has countermeasures, and it is explicitly designed to take a punch and keep fighting.
Right, it's built for conflict.
But a commercial port is like an open-air farmer's market. It only functions because it has no walls. It is designed to be open, to receive thousands of trucks and ships from all over the world. You can't put heavy armor on a farmer's market without completely destroying the business model.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question about the tactical reality of a direct attack list, because we have completely moved away from ship-to-ship skirmishes at this point.
Right, we're talking about massive civilian hubs.
Ports are massive, static, commercial entities. To formally designate them as direct targets is a massive escalation in scale. It blurs the lines between military conflict and commercial enterprise.
It really does.
It brings the threat directly to the loading docks, the oil terminals, and the customs warehouses.
Wait, I'm stuck on something here, though. If I'm an IRGC commander, why target static commercial ports? Isn't that virtually guaranteed to turn the entire international community against me? What is the strategic advantage of angering 50 neutral countries whose cargo happens to be sitting on those docks?
It all comes down to leverage. You hit the nail on the head when you mentioned angering neutral countries. In asymmetric warfare, if you cannot win a direct fight against a superior military force, your best option is to force the rest of the world to intervene and stop the fight for you.
Oh, wow. So you drag them into it.
By placing 5 major ports on a direct attack list, you are maximizing the blast radius of your threat. You are forcing third-party countries that have absolutely nothing to do with the U.S.-Iran tensions to suddenly care deeply about this conflict.
Because their civilian ships and their billion-dollar cargo loads are now sitting on a designated target list.
Exactly. Furthermore, we need to look at how a port is actually attacked in the modern era. You don't necessarily need to drop bombs to cripple a farmer's market.
You just block the roads.
Right, you just block the road leading to it. Or, in the case of a port, you can paralyze the digital customs infrastructure with a cyber attack. If the computers can't tell which container goes on which truck, the port effectively ceases to function.
Yeah.
Or, you can deploy a handful of cheap naval mines in the shipping channel outside the port. The physical damage might be minimal, but the psychological and economic damage is absolute.
And that leads us directly into the ultimate so what of this intelligence brief, the consequence that eventually reaches you, the listener. We started with consecutive strikes on Chabahar Port.
Right.
That led to the IRGC Navy's 0-hour warning. That then expanded into a direct attack list for 5 major Gulf ports. And the direct result of all of this is a massive immediate threat to global shipping and energy markets.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the economic chain reaction becomes terrifyingly clear. The Gulf isn't just a body of water. It is one of the most critical maritime choke points on the planet.
For the entire world.
To understand how fragile this system is, we have to look at the mechanics of the shipping market, specifically maritime insurance.
Right, because shipping companies don't just blindly sail billion-dollar assets into combat zones based on hope. They operate based on actuarial tables and cold, hard risk assessments.
Exactly. Take the Lloyd's of London Joint War Committee, for example.
Yeah.
They monitor global threats and designate certain waters as high-risk areas. If 5 major Gulf ports are publicly placed on an attack list, the underwriters take notice immediately.
I bet they do.
The insurance premiums for a commercial vessel to enter those waters, what they call war risk premiums, skyrocket overnight. In some cases, underwriters might refuse to cover the voyage entirely.
So, without a single shot actually being fired at a commercial vessel, the mere existence of the attack list makes it financially unviable to send ships to those ports.
Yeah.
The insurance costs alone just wipe out the profit margin of the voyage.
Which forces shipping companies to make very drastic decisions. They either halt operations entirely, anchoring their ships and waiting for the tensions to cool, or they reroute.
And rerouting isn't simple.
No. In global shipping, rerouting means adding loops to a journey, burning millions of dollars in extra fuel, and completely destroying the timeline of the supply chain.
Let's talk about that timeline, because modern supply chains are incredibly unforgiving. We operate on this just-in-time logistics model.
It's an efficiency model entirely designed to save money on storage. Factories don't keep 3 months' worth of parts sitting in a warehouse anymore.
Right, they just have them delivered the day they need them.
They rely on a continuous, uninterrupted flow of ships arriving exactly when they are supposed to. So, if a container ship carrying microchips from Asia is delayed by 3 weeks because it has to avoid the Gulf, an automotive factory in Europe might have to halt its entire production line.
Which means workers are furloughed.
Dealerships don't get inventory. The ripple effect is just instantaneous and massive.
That covers the cargo side of things. But the brief specifically mentions energy markets, and that is where the volatility gets exponential. Because the Gulf is, without a doubt, the undisputed epicenter of global energy flow.
A massive percentage of the world's daily fuel supply, both crude oil and liquid natural gas, moves through the waters and loading terminals near these 5 targeted ports.
And energy markets don't like uncertainty?
No, they are hypersensitive. They run on the absolute assurance that the oil will flow tomorrow just exactly like it did today. Any disruption to that predictability causes panic.
And how does that panic actually manifest in the real world? Like, we always hear about markets pricing in risk on the news, but what is the actual mechanism there?
It mostly happens in the commodities futures markets. Traders buy and sell contracts for oil that will be delivered months from now.
Okay.
When intelligence indicates that 5 major loading ports are under threat of direct attack, traders assume there will be a supply shortage in the near future. So they scramble to buy whatever oil is available right now, driving the price up violently.
So the market is essentially reacting to a ghost.
Pretty much.
I mean, the oil is still flowing today. The ports haven't actually been attacked yet, but the price spikes anyway because of what might happen at 0 hour.
And that price spike isn't just numbers moving on a screen in a financial district somewhere. It translates directly to the physical economy.
Right.
It increases the cost of maritime diesel, which raises the cost of shipping every other product on Earth. It increases the cost of jet fuel, raising airline ticket prices.
It hits everyone.
It translates directly to the cost of filling up your car at the local gas station and the cost of heating your home in the winter. Energy is the baseline cost of literally everything we do.
So what does this all mean for you? Let's distill this entire chain of events down. This brief perfectly illustrates the extreme vulnerability of our modern, hyper-connected world.
It really does.
It shows how a localized, kinetic military action inherently destabilizes global economics. We saw the dominoes fall, step by step, strictly by looking at the mechanics of the brief. U.S. strikes on a specific logistics node, Chabahar Port, happen on consecutive nights. That sustained rhythmic hammering demands a response, disrupting the adversary's decision loop. The IRGC Navy responds by setting a psychological and tactical 0 hour designed to induce fatigue and strain American naval readiness.
Which is a huge tactical move.
And then they drastically widen the blast radius of that threat by placing 5 massive static commercial Gulf ports on a direct attack list, utilizing leverage to force international intervention. And suddenly, an intelligence brief about military tensions in a specific region is actually a brief about the energy grid powering your city and the shipping containers carrying the things you rely on.
It is the perfect distillation of cause and effect in the 21st century. The firewalls between military action and civilian economic reality just no longer exist.
They're gone.
They are permanently fused. The moment you threaten a port, you threaten the entire global circulatory system.
And as we map this out, I want to briefly reiterate our primary goal today. We set out to trace that fuse entirely without bias. The situation detailed in the brief is incredibly tense, and the geopolitical stakes are undeniably high. But our focus was simply to walk through the facts, the military doctrine, and the economic cause and effect chain presented in the source without taking a political stance on the nations involved. We are just looking at the machinery of how a crisis escalates.
Because understanding that machinery is really the only way to truly grasp what is happening when you see these alarming headlines flash across your screen. It allows you to see the underlying logic behind all the chaos.
It's about being informed, understanding the mechanisms at play, and, not just being swept up in the alarmism of the 24/7 news cycle. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the U.S.-Iran tensions brief, I want to turn the focus back over to you, the listener.
I'd like to leave you with a final thought to ponder, something that builds directly on the mechanics we've unpacked today.
Go ahead.
We started by talking about the world as a highly sensitive circulatory system, relying on just-in-time logistics and delicate insurance markets. If a localized dispute, triggered by strikes on a single port, can instantly threaten the very foundation of global shipping and energy prices, how resilient is our highly connected global economy in the first place?
That is the million-dollar question. We've optimized everything for efficiency, but have we completely sacrificed resilience?
If the mere threat to just 5 ports can bottleneck the entire planet, forcing us to worry about supply chains halting and energy prices surging thousands of miles away, are we constantly living 1 0 hour away from an everyday economic crisis?
That's a scary thought.
Is our relentless pursuit of a hyper-efficient, borderless global market actually our greatest shared vulnerability?
It really makes you rethink that brightly colored map with the solid black lines. The borders might look firm and compartmentalized on paper, but in reality, we are all standing on the exact same economic tripwire, waiting to see if anyone trips. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep looking for the underlying mechanisms, and keep questioning the world around you. We'll catch you next time.